Most AM Best rated property casualty insurers in the Caribbean region performed better than expected in 2020, despite the hurdles presented by COVID 19. I'm John Weber for AM Best TV. Here to discuss a new AM Best special report on the region's insurance markets is Ann Modica, Associate Director of Industry Research and Analytics, and Ricardo Longchallon, Senior Financial Analyst. And Ann, we're going to start with you. Given the region's dependency on tourism, to what extent did COVID hurt the economy and market in 2020?
So tourism-dependent countries in the Caribbean were particularly hard hit due to the undiversified nature of their economies. The IMF is estimating that in aggregate, tourism-dependent countries, their GDP contracted by almost 10% last year as border closures and lockdown measures curtailed international travel. Over 10 countries in the region source as much as 30% of their GDP from tourism, and to put it into perspective, the world average is just at about 14% of GDP. So most of the Caribbean is at double, if not significantly above this level, which really leaves them vulnerable to external shocks. And I'm also going to briefly touch on how COVID resulted in a pretty significant loss of employment in the region. The tourism sector is a major contributor to employment, with many countries seeing an uptick in unemployment last year. And all of this leads to lower domestic demand and a bigger strain on the country's fiscal accounts, when fiscal revenues are limited to provide benefits to those who are affected by the pandemic.
Ricky, how are PC insurers in the region managing hardening reinsurance pricing?
Reinsurance costs drive pricing in the region. And for the most part, there's no requirement to file for rate increases as insurers are required to do in the US. So increases in reinsurance pricing, and for that matter, decreases in pricing, do not need approval by the regulators. Rated insurers in the Caribbean can adjust rates fairly easily and have been implementing rate increases along with higher deductibles in order to maintain an adequate rate structure.
Ricky, do you think life health insurers were dealt a difficult year with the pandemic?
Yes, John. Rated life health companies experienced a disruption in top-line growth in 2020 as a result of the pandemic. Premiums decreased as some insurers provided premium relief to policyholders impacted by economic conditions. Life health insurers with direct exposure to hotel and hospitality investments realized impaired valuations, and this was the single largest component which drove the declines in total revenue and net income. On the flip side, however, these insurers benefited from lower utilization expense in health claims as a result of changes in policyholder behavior and lack of access to medical care due to stay-at-home restrictions. I would say overall, the decline in net income was less than anticipated at the onset of the pandemic.
And is there significant room for growth in this region, and are insurers doing enough to build awareness?
One of the main drivers for growth in the insurance industry is growth in the country's GDP. And it's expected that the region will rebound in 2021. The IMF is projecting that tourism-dependent countries will rebound by 2.4% this year, and that will uptick to 4.4% next year. And then if we look at the commodity exporters among them, they're also expected to recover, with the IMF forecasting growth of 4% this year. And all things being equal, this bodes well for the insurance market. However, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that there are several downside risks, with the most prominent being the further outbreak of the virus, such as the Delta variant that we're seeing now. And this could force governments to reinstate more restrictive measures that would drag the economy for the tourism-dependent economies. And then when you look at the commodity exporters, they would also be impacted due to the likelihood that lower external demand for commodities would take place in that type of situation.
This is an interesting question, John. There is a significant protection gap in the region. I believe if we look at 2017 with Hurricanes Irma and Maria, economic losses were in the region of $32 billion US, but insured losses was just about $5 billion, which indicates a protection gap of more than 80%. By comparison, the protection gap in North America is approximately 50%. This indicates that there should be room for growth regionally. However, penetration beyond existing markets has been difficult for insurers and the gap has remained fairly constant. As regards building awareness, I'm not convinced that it is a lack of awareness. Several jurisdictions have insurance associations that promote the importance and benefits of insurance protection. And rated Caribbean insurers are active in the communities supporting and contributing to various events and causes. The benefits of coverage are certainly evident after an event. So I don't think it is a lack of effort by insurers to build awareness. It may be a cost issue with many choosing to self-insure. Microinsurance has been mentioned as a possible mechanism to reach out to the uninsured, but it is early days yet on that front.
Thanks, Ricky. Ann?
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
That was Ann Modica, Associate Director of Industry Research and Analytics, and Ricardo Longchallon, Senior Financial Analyst. You can find the full report online at ambest.com. For AM Best TV, I'm John Weber.